All right, hey everybody, I'm Lieutenant Colonel Mike Bliss from the ACCIG, and I'm about to talk to you in two different videos. This is part one. We're going to talk about commander's responsibilities as defined in AFI 1-2. And you'll notice I'm in civilian clothes because this is not an Air Force endorsed or filmed video at all. This is just me kind of giving you some thoughts after being a commander for 5 years and then being on the IG team for 2. So what we find when we go out is a lot of times commanders are unfamiliar with how to apply the things they see in 1-2 and how that affects their self-assessment program, which we'll focus on in part 2 is our unit self-assessment program. But right here we're going to talk about, just kind of go over some ideas and some functions of the 1-2. So when you look at the 1-2, it has 4 areas as a commander is responsible for. And what we find out is that as an IG, that's what we go when we look at our major graded areas, or those 4 commanders' responsibilities. So it is key, and APHIS is the commander's responsibilities, and they understand. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of walk through. The first one we're going to look at is executing the mission. Why that one? Because that's kind of the easiest. The executing the mission will be the last thing to fail. Everything below that, the other 3 major graded areas or responsibilities will probably fall apart before we fail at the mission. So let's just talk about that one first. So executing the mission. And I put this up on here because I write like a 5th grader and I'm spell check dependent. So we'll just use this here as we go through that. So executing the mission, some things that come to mind that are easy to look at that you would put in your billywig. And why don't we talk about this? So if you're a new commander or you're not familiar with kind of how to apply this stuff, what you can do is sit down with your squadron leadership and say, hey, these are the 4 areas that I'm responsible for as a commander, and as a team, we're going to do these things, so let's start talking about them. Let's look at them. So what would you put under executing the mission for your unit? So there's some things here. One of them is logistics performance indicators. So if you're familiar with the aircraft maintenance world and ops, those are LPIs. That's where we look about our health of the fleet and how our fleet is doing. If you're a flying unit, you're also familiar with RAP, Ready Aircrew Program. So that's how pilots track their readiness and as they go through, as well as CMR rate, Combat Mission Ready Aircrew Program. And we make sure that our pilots can fly jets that are capable and be ready to fly to war and have the training that they need to do as well. Some other stuff for executing a mission you as a commander should do, especially if you're a new commander taking over a unit, or if you're a previous commander but you're taking over another unit, is that doc statement review. What are you tasked to do? What do you need to be ready for? Because a lot of times we get caught up in the day-to-day and meetings and different things and chasing things that we have to do, but overall we're responsible to make sure our unit is ready to execute its doc statement. And it's surprisingly how many people don't know what's on their doc statement and don't know what's required. And another thing that you find out too is you'll look at your doc statement and you'll see that it's incomplete. And then this is where you work with A3 through your XP or plan shop or somebody on your wing and get your doc statement correct to do what your mission can do. Another one is your monthly DERS and ART and APIT input, is that we report on our readiness. As a commander, that is your main speaking tool up the chain of command. Are you ready to execute your doc statement? And so in that is important, and we're going to talk about some things that we can help assess and validate our ability to execute our doc statement. But another one is the flying hour program if you're in one of those kind of wings. And if you're not in a flying or aviation wing, you're in an ISR wing, or you're in a comm wing, or maybe a heavy missile, large missile wing, there are things you can put in here if you start thinking about it and writing it down. So what I suggest, none of this is AFI driven. This is Mike Bliss telling you some ideas and thoughts to use. So I would say have a grease board in your office, or some kind of document, maybe a PowerPoint or something like that, and you have your 4 MGAs lined up and you track down what are you doing in those areas. So that's executing the mission. Again, that's probably the easiest one for us to put our arms around and our hands around, because we measure how are we doing in our mission quite a bit in many different ways. The second one we're going to look at is we're going to look at managing resources. So managing resources is many different things, right? So it's equipment and people are kind of the main things. Some of the stuff we're going to talk about that fall under managing resources is the unit manning document. The UDM, is it validated? Is it verified? Do you have what you're supposed to have? And do you need a request? Has your mission changed where you need to request maybe a new study, a manpower study, to catch up to your mission? Another one is manpower utilization. So what we hear a lot of times is we'll ask for concerns of the wing before we go out and visit as an IG. Or when you get to your new squadron, if you haven't gotten there yet, or shortly after you took over, you probably heard, hey, we have manpower issues. We don't have enough manpower. So what you'll find out, though, if you look at your union manning document, is a lot of times you have the manpower, but what you need to assess or look at is manpower utilization, right? So there was one unit we went to that said, hey, this one AFSC, several levels, we're hurt, we need help right up headquarters, they haven't given us enough people we need. And they come to find out they had 4 of those AFSCs that they were saying they were critical for working completely outside of their AFSC doing something else. And so that's that manpower utilization and looking at that. Unit spend plan, an execution plan, funding, finances. How are you tracking your money? Is it something you look at? Is it something you watch? You project where you're going to spend your money and what you need. Those are things that fall under managing resources. Equipment status and readiness reporting. A lot of times, and that's why there's a SII out right now as we film this for doing a logistics audit and going and looking at our equipment and checking, making sure everything is there and the status is correct as we go through that. Commanders, clear and concise guidance. It needs to be clear, and you don't need to write a policy for every single thing. So make sure it's concise and it gets to the mission you want, and that you create an environment where people have something to follow. And all this is in the 1-2. And then the last part that's kind of falls under the managing resources. There's a whole lot, but is airman's time. It's taking care of our airmen and making sure we give them clear, concise guidance, a roadmap ahead, the tools and equipment they need to do their jobs, and we give them the right schedule and the right timing to do those tasks and those jobs.